6 minutes past the top of the hour here on PARA-SCOPE Uncensored on the Hazy Radio Network. I'm your host, Clarissa Vasquez, and with me, as always, is my dusty sidekick co-host, Mr. Rick Ariza.
Here I am, Code 3.
And our guest this evening is Mr. A.K. Kuykendall, author and explainer of truths in an entertaining form, I would say. Before the break, we were talking about the Kennedy assassination, and Rick actually posted this question in the chat room. I'm going to let him go ahead and ask the question himself, but it's definitely a very thought-provoking question, and I really would like to hear your input on it.
AK, it's really simple. We were talking during the break, and I need to know, what do you think, was there any collusion with the Johnson administration?
Very much so. Very much so. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No. You beat me to it, because I was about to lead that up with, you do realize and understand that the 28th Amendment hadn't been needed, although we had had other presidents assassinated while in office. But the 28th Amendment wasn't brought about until Johnson actually took the oath on the plane coming out of Dallas. What are your thoughts on that?
Can you describe the 28th Amendment, just in layman's?
The 28th Amendment has to do with the succession of presidents. Okay. What the actual criterion is, the president has to actually be dead. Now, in this case, medically speaking, in a modern sense, and I'm guessing it has to do because of time, technology nowadays, Kennedy was not technically dead. There was still some brain activity. I doubt he was probably, if you stop and you think about trajectory, wound path, wound channel, there may or may not have been some kind of brain activity, but technically he was still kind of sort of there. So the 28th Amendment was not in place for a president, a sitting president who was actually debilitated in some way, shape, or form. In Lincoln's case, in Garfield's case, and other presidents' cases, when the president died, vice president was able to step in neatly, cleanly, quietly, and obviously in Kennedy's case, Johnson did not walk in quietly, cleanly. I mean, for the love of God, Jackie was standing behind him, and the pictures are showing, I've got a copy of the book around here somewhere. There it is. Jackie is standing behind Johnson on the plane. The casket is in the cargo hold, and she's still covered with blood and brain matter, the poor woman. And, I'm thinking, I'm wondering if you have reason to believe that there was collusion on the part of the Johnson administration, because of the military-industrial complex, what leads you to that? What have you got?
And I do briefly touch on those bases in my fact-based fiction tale in Conspirator's Odyssey about the collusion Lyndon B. Johnson had, LBJ had, to it. He actually flagshipped the entire thing. He was like, you might as well call Lyndon B. Johnson just something that equates to his administration or people that he ran with, something that equates to the mob, the way that they conducted themselves in politics. But that's a whole nother story. But yeah, she was covered in blood. You also seen Lyndon B. Johnson winking at a man that was behind him during his swearing in, with a sinister smile on his face. Ultimately, Kennedy was not going to survive. What I allude to is other news-making avenues where I talk about Kennedy being drugged in his early morning breakfast before he left Washington, before he left for Dallas from Washington. He was drugged. He wasn't going to survive that day. No matter what you say, no matter what anybody would have done, he wasn't going to survive. Why you think Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in so early? Even with him having a brain activity, he was not going to survive. They all knew it. But Lyndon B. Johnson was actually put in place because he backed the same individuals that were wanting to enact this grand science experiment that John F. Kennedy was in the way of.
Okay.
He made a deal with the devil, but he tried to also clean it up. You ever notice that? Because the experiment actually failed. My reporting focuses on the concept that the experiment actually failed. It was a massive failure, and they killed more of us than they ever could of the enemy. And just to test out this serum or test out this project, but he actually tried to get our minds off of that by doing something that no president was even damn and doing except for John F. Kennedy, and that was passing the Civil Rights Act. He passed something so grand that he was just ultimately, that move was just to try to get the American people's minds off of the facts and the deaths that were occurring in Vietnam.
Let me ask you this. Super serum. You've brought this up several times. When I remember when I went through Fort Knox basic training, I got so many shots it wasn't funny. And I'm thinking, what exactly was this super serum, and what is the connection between, if there is any, connection between this super serum that you're talking about, what is it, and Agent Orange?
Orange is a whole nother thing. I don't go into detail about Agent Orange, but that was a whole nother experiment, but that also was still another experiment of the military-industrial complex. It was all, in a sense, it is connected because they were testing how your body reacts to certain things, and after those individuals were exposed to that, their mission was just to sit in the desert, bomb goes off, they get subjected to this new bacterium, and then they actually had more tests on those same individuals that actually got sprayed with Agent Orange. You did notice that, right? Because you could, in the military, not one of you that served in the military, anybody that served in the military can actually turn down an inoculation. Did y'all know that?
That's true. Yeah, I never turned down.
Yeah, that's correct.
You could not turn it down. Basically, when you sign up, people keep saying, I'm going to go for 4 years, 5 years to be in the military. My little brother was, he's honorably discharged from the Navy. My older brother, he's dishonorably discharged from the Navy. But they allude to the fact that they could not turn down an inoculation. If you did, they'll put you on what you call grunt work, or they'll punish you in some way, shape, or form to the point where eventually you'll end up taking those drugs that they're trying to administer. Just like you heard of a drug called Larium that's been driving people mad. That's all connected to this whole super soldier. Let's look at it this way. If you read some of my syndicated articles that are all over the world, you can read some of my syndicated articles on the extraterrestrial connection or super soldier connection. John F. Kennedy's the conundrum of an addendum to the Eisenhower understanding of what was going on. You could not turn down anything that was given, but you got to look at it this way. Animal testing tells scientists but so much. They need to test it out on us. Now think about all the massive corporation known as the pharmaceutical industry. Think about how massive that is. See, the animal testing only tells scientists but so much. They have to introduce it to us. So with the unholy alliance between the FDA and these pharmaceutical companies, they push out these drugs upon the masses, and then they back it up with millions of dollars in an advertising campaign, selling us on this. I would tell you and your guests to wait about at least 3 to 4 years before trying that new miracle drug. 9 times out of 10, it's going to have a long line of cancer patients and deaths before the 4 years are over with.
Well, and television programs now are inundated with commercials about lawsuits against these pharmaceutical companies because people are developing potentially lethal complications.
Very much so. They're testing on us like they've been testing on our men and women in our United States Armed Forces. They've been doing this from day one. They've been doing this since the 50s, since the days of Truman and before, but more when technology started to play a part. They've been doing it more since the early 40s. They've been testing on us forever. They've been testing on our astronauts, everything. It's a scary thing if you think about it. That's why I say when it comes down to the complexity of our United States and the world, for that matter, it's a very strange scenario. I always call it an enigma. that are
Now,
what's going on.
Before we went to the break, you mentioned Sandy Hook.
Mm.
Is there a connection? Or
I would say yes. I would say yes. Don't mean to cut you off, but I would say yes, there is a connection. And the only reason I mentioned Sandy Hook is because of no weapon can ever be put on the battlefield without some form of testing. I think mind control had something to do with Sandy Hook from that young man.
Okay.
And
Mind
I think
control.
his mother,
Let's elaborate on that.
I think his mother also knew he was being tested in secret. She was being paid in secret. That's why she had to be taken out too. His first mission was to kill her. And then his second mission was to enact that heinous crime on those children.
Now to me as a parent, and all of us that are parents, Rick and I are both parents, you're a parent, obviously.
Yes.
What benefit is there to enact that crime out on children? What purpose does that serve? How does that, what sort of data do they gather by having this heinous crime enacted out on children?
Well, think about how heinous it is to kill children, rather than adults, just to kill children, to kill babies. How heinous is that? There's no emotion stronger than that of you doing something that's completely outside of the box. Killing babies in their cribs or killing children. Those cute, adorable eyes that look at you with those crooked teeth. You just basically, that right there pulls at the heartstrings. What better to test out a weapon with something that would 9 times out of 10 throw the entire project off its kilter if their psychosis starts going crazy and overrides their agenda or their mentally infused objectives. And on top of that, let's think about the objectives on top of that. What if it's meant for, let's say, gun control? What if it's meant? It's like an end justifies the means. What if it was meant to try to? It was done on this level, so heinous of a crime, and everybody's heartstrings pull, psychological heartstrings pull for children. When someone's trying to enact gun control, wouldn't that be the best thing to do? Killing a whole bunch of adults, we don't shed that much of a tear, but when it comes down to babies, which we all have, the majority of us have, that right there can, push the debate ahead quicker than normal, right?
Okay, your rationalization of that makes a lot of sense. Are there any other instances that you can speak about where this potential mind control has come into play?
I'd say all the stuff that's going on. I can say the recent instances. The Navy Yard shooting that just happened recently, and this whatever happened just today at this airport.
The shooting at LAX.
Yes, shooting at LAX. I believe all this stuff is nothing but a test. They're sending these individuals out. Let's say who shot Reagan? What's his name? Help me out here, guys.
Brinkley, something like that.
Hinckley.
Hinckley, that's it. You got me.
Yeah, he shot the president, right? He was supposed to kill the president.
Right.
All that was mind control. All that was part of the military-industrial complex. And would you happen to believe, I actually talk about this a little bit in my novel, Conspirator's Odyssey, where Hinckley, the reasons for the super soldier serum and whatnot, Hinckley was actually injected with a beta version as well in some weird way. It was supposed to have driven him insane. But ultimately, there was another serum that was actually put on the bullet, injected in the bullet, that actually penetrated Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was not meant to be killed. He was meant to be driven insane. And the beta serum that was used in Vietnam was actually put into the bullet that actually penetrated Ronald Reagan, because it drove men insane in Vietnam, and they wanted the same thing. Certain powers that be in the military-industrial complex wanted it to happen to Reagan, so they could actually the public would actually wholeheartedly accept George H.W. Bush into office as president. if they
So
can
would the same
show,
apply to Mark David Chapman?
Yes.
Well, here's the thing.
But I can tell you this: Hinckley did not shoot the president. One of the Secret Service shot President Ronald Reagan. Hinckley was just shooting around like a madman. He was the person that was making so much noise that everybody focused their attention on him. But the shot actually came from someone else.
Was Hinckley the one that shot Brady?
Brady. I'm lost.
Responsible for the Brady bill. I believe he was a senator. That was
no, he was not a senator.
Or no, he was a cabinet member that was with President Reagan and was shot and actually paralyzed.
Yes, basically Hinckley was shooting around like a madman. He was just shooting all over the damn place. he was just shooting everywhere.
He couldn't hit a bull in the fanny with a bass fiddle.
Exactly. Someone else shot, but it was purposely meant to shoot Reagan with a specific bullet. But someone else shot Reagan.
Well, here's the
thing. In all that commotion, someone else shot Reagan.
If I remember correctly, as it's put out in the news, and you probably will sit there and say, yes, this is what you've been meant to hear. Reagan, in the end, finally, years later, passed away from complications from Alzheimer's dementia. We know that much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, I can't think of anything right off the top of my head other than illicit drugs that would induce that sort of an effect. And I'm an EMT. Clarissa's been spent time as an EMT, and so is our producer Scott. I can't think of anything that really breaks down the mind other than some of the best meth, and I know it sounds facetious, but stop and think about it. Some of the best meth in the world is made in the United States, and we originally got meth from the Third Reich, if I remember correctly. Now, was that the aim? Just to test this drug on Reagan, or just basically just to get him out of the way?
Actually, it was meant to get him out the way. It was meant to drive him insane. So we, the people, will because they couldn't do something as sensationalized as they did when killing Kennedy. They didn't want to do that anymore. They wanted to choose another method on trying to get the American people to accept, like we really wholeheartedly never really accepted Lyndon B. Johnson. That's obvious. But they wanted President H.W. Bush to be sworn into office based on the incapacity that Reagan had to continue his stint as president. They wanted to drive him crazy, but no one can tell me that we did not see something totally different after that assassination attempt. He was a total different man. Total different.
Yeah, I will agree with you on that. We are going to have to go to our bottom of the hour break, our final commercial of the evening. But when we come back, we're going to be talking about some more conspiracies with Mr. A.K. Kuykendall on PARA-SCOPE Uncensored on the Hazy Radio Network. Stay tuned. 30 minutes past the hour on PARA-SCOPE Uncensored on the Hazy Radio Network. I'll tell you, I've said it before and I will say it again, sometimes the best conversations happen, behind the scenes when we are off the air. We've been talking about some JFK, we've been talking a little Ronald Reagan, little LBJ, little George H.W., but not more importantly, but in addition to the conspirators' odyssey, I keep wanting to say oddity, but that's, we've been working on that parody, that Space Oddity parody. In addition to that, you've also got a paranormal piece out, and I think we're going to have to, it's a trilogy actually, and we're going to have you back on the show to talk about that.
I'll be more than up for that.
But, at the end of the segment, I do want to give you, some time. I'm going to give the floor to you because I know there's some stuff you want to talk about. There's another piece you want to read, and that is wonderful. I want you to have the opportunity to do that. But our engineer, Scott, has a question for you.
All right.
And so I'm going to kind of turn the mic over to Scott for a minute and let him ask you.
AK, this has been a fascinating show tonight, listening to you, Clarissa and Rick. just have a great conversation about Kennedy and stuff. I've had a question, and it's kind of maybe a philosophical question at that, and you may be one of the best people to ask. Some of the things I've thought about, because I've read a lot about the Kennedy assassination recently, and the 9/11 shows we've done on my show, I've kind of wondered what starts to happen when people wake up. It's always been a fear of mine. It's what happens when people figure out what's going on. And say everybody begins to wake up, I'm just talking in theory. Say if the people start to wake up and we start making the changes needed to basically reverse whatever you want to call it, the globalist agenda or whatever is trying to do. What happens then? What would happen then, just in your mind? I'm not asking you to give a factual based response, but just in your opinion, what would happen if the American people, or let's say the people of the world, started to wake up in their own countries? And start making changes in their governments and stuff? What happens then?
I would just say that would be an equivalent to being the end of the world. Now, I'm just speaking off the cuff here. There's no way that we, the people, control anything. The trajectory of our United States and world and the global occurrences can tell each and every one of us this. We don't control anything. Just like in our politics today, money controls everything. Money controls who goes into office, who gets into office. Presidents, as anybody should know, are not elected; they're selected by a few that are amongst the hordes and the 1%. But from my perspective, America is supposed to be a democracy, and a democracy is of the people, by the people, and for the people. In actuality, our America is nothing but a bureaucracy. There's people behind the people that we supposedly vote in the office that actually control this country. Mm-hmm. And that's a country, and that bureaucracy ultimately, by definition, is a country ran by the unelected. We don't have any control, even though we are deceived into believing we do have control. So I would say, to your question, there is absolutely nothing we could do by waking up. The whole concept of the Matrix, living in Zion, they would take us out like they took out Koresh at Waco. It's better, in order to enact, I'm saying this on the air, I can't believe I'm saying this on the air, but in order to enact any kind of revolution, don't you think it's better for it to happen from the inside out rather than the outside in? Mm-hmm. Waco is an example of the outside in, where you barred yourself inside of a complex. Your electricity is cut off, so you can't tell your side of the story to the masses, while the corporations that own our news complex are churning out any kind of story they want to turn out, while you're deaf, dumb, and blind behind doors before you get burnt out. You know what I mean? And killed. Mm. But the best way to enact a revolution is from the inside out, which I think, let's say, hypothetically speaking, the Tea Party are doing right now. They infiltrated the Republican Party. They've gotten themselves elected to office, and now they're enacting drastic social changes in our America. Something that the majority, the two-party, what I call the Republican and Democratic Party, I call them two-party dictatorships that are fighting like hell, the man over the masses of American society, to keep the trajectory ongoing. So I just said there's no way that we can actually usurp. There's no way that we can actually take control. We can hold on to our guns all we want to. That's not going to do anything for us.
Do you believe that the situation you're talking about is the gears are moving so fast now? Is there a way that it can be reversed or slowed?
No, not at all. I know I'm being very pessimistic, but I have to be as honest to what I know, what I've studied, and what I've seen, and ultimately what I'm experiencing. We, the people, have no power. They're even building luxurious underground, self-sustaining underground condominiums for the 1%. Something is happening. You hear about them on these news reports, don't you? You hear about all these new secret places where underground buildings are being erected for a select few. Nothing but the wealthy are going there. We don't have none of that.
know,
We're
I've
nothing
heard
but pawns on a
conspiracy
chessboard.
theories about about the underground buildings. I've heard things from, natural disasters to that comet that is, supposedly going to come within a few hundred miles of the planet, later this month.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a bunch of theories, and haven't seen, I personally have not seen any evidence of the underground structures. I've seen plenty of evidence of above ground structures that are empty but heavily guarded by military, surrounded by barbed wire fence with the barbed wire facing in, as if it's a potential concentration camp.
But but you gotta understand. You just go to these, just go to like the HDTV or those shows that are showing about these buildings where we're building yachts, and the people that build yachts, they're also building clandestine areas, condominiums underground. They're building it in there, and it's just like they're rubbing it in the 99% space. They're rubbing all these new attributes that we would never get close to, no matter if we saved all our lives. We, the people, the 99% are nothing but expendable, just as expendable as any given pawn on a chessboard. People don't care about us. They never have. They never will. Money speaks. We're nothing. America and the world, and humanity in general, has to just look at it that way. It's a bummer to think that way, but yes, if you just look at these programs, there are people that are erecting these underground things. That's not a conspiracy. That's just what's happening. But it's more of a sinister. There's more of a sinister objective behind it. It's what gets me. It's what I delve into. The why. Why are you building these buildings? Why? But when you talk about conspiracy part of it, yeah, there's underground things at Area 51. All that stuff is clandestine stuff. That's part of a conspiracy theory. But this is just houses being built underground. That's not a conspiracy. That's just what it is. But these houses are up at the $250,000, $750,000 or $1 million and above, just to be in one of those, just to have one of those things. And only the filthy rich can actually acquire one even before the building is complete.
So
and they're doing it today.
If there was one piece of advice that you could give our listeners, what would that be?
It's going to sound very insensitive, but I can only be as jokey as part of which is part of my personality. I advise you, Clarissa, Rick, I advise myself and anybody else listening in to just go to any given Home Depot and grab yourself a shovel. And I think you know the end of that.
Wow. That is totally not what I was expecting.
I want to be more optimistic. My wife is optimistic. I'm scared, to be honest with you. I'm really scared. Maybe part of the way I'm approaching life and my thoughts. I don't rage against this machine. I never have, never will. This machine is turning. It's going to turn this way regardless. I look at this world as being just something is similar to the Matrix. It's meant to make us feel like we have control when we don't. It's like a unified or a universal trickster at work, and we're being played with every day. I always go down this or drive down the street, or just I'm in certain areas and I see kids. And even adults are kid-like adults. And they always have headphones on, or they're always listening to music. I'm looking at the news, and all hell's breaking loose. But these individuals, I always say to myself, they're just still dancing. Why are you guys still dancing? Do you guys know what's going on right now in the world? Most individuals are not, because they are already too far gone. They know they have no control. So therefore, they're going to just latch on to what little control they have, and that's of what they're thinking about in any given moment. Most
kind of a Hakuna Matata approach.
Most people go too far, and they go into drugs, crack, because that's the only thing that can give themselves a sense of something, of feeling good where they have no control in their life. I used to work in the fast food industry, and as an executive in the fast food industry, I used to get onslaught of complaints, even whether they're real complaints or fictional complaints. Either way, they're complaints. And 9 times out of 10, I say that customers, I always say to myself, when customers come in and they're berating you, they're berating your employees and whatnot, I always say, I turn and just try to put a little levity in the whole thing. 9 times out of 10, that woman or man don't have no control in their household, don't have no control over their children. Something's going drastically wrong in their lives, and or their bosses are coming down on them. And what they do is they come in here and they take it out on people that are paid to serve them. That's how little control we have.
Now, I agree with you on that aspect. I mean, it's rather mind-boggling how many similarities, how many things you and I have in common, because I also was upper level in the fast food industry. And I did not quite make it to executive, but I did make it as high as the district level. But I can tell you that is really accurate, that the people that are complaining the most are the ones with the least amount of control. I agree with you on that.
They're just trying to find some way to gain that control. And how do I get to the level of being the executive? I float that bottom line. I get the corporation what they want. I'm not going to lose that customer. Oh, I'm going to make you feel like you got all the control in the world, even though I'm playing the same rules as our United States and as the world nations are doing to its people. I'm making you believe that you are bigger and better than you believe yourself to be.
Right. And so where does the magic apple pie fall into this? In the fast food industry, you give away a free apple pie, to appease the customer. Where's the magic apple pie as far as the state of our world goes?
I just say that giving away an apple pie, I think that's superfluous. That's actually unnecessary. Giving away apple pie, that actually could counteract what you're trying to do. Give them apple pie if they want an apple pie, but you're just trying to make it right. Me, I love talking. I love talking to people. I can make it right just with my words alone. I got what you call the gift of gab. I always say to myself, I'm so good of a salesman, I can sell an ant. Hear me out now. I can sell an ant an idea to go to the moon, get a moon rock, chisel a Superman figurine, and deliver it to you down here on Earth on a silver platter with a smile on his face. And you want to know why I'm a good salesman? Ask me why. The only reason I'm a good salesman because ants don't have teeth, ladies and gentlemen. Ants don't have teeth. I gotta be good if I can convince something with no teeth to smile.
AK, I spent 20 years in law enforcement, security, and corrections. I spent a lot of time working for a school district, and up until about 2005, I watched a very short, sharp decline in children literally, for lack of a better term, turning anarchist. And it's really scary because, you're right. It's scary. They've turned. Some of them are fantastic. Some of our young people nowadays are absolutely fantastic, and there are others that they put the fear of God in you. They put the fear of God in you. And lately the joke has been, with me, I make sheep noises. And in a way, the sheep noises, it's kind of sort of a wake-up call, if you ask me, because we are merely sheep to our government, and it's the smart sheep that somehow get away. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting here listening to you in awe, and what else? It makes me wonder what else is coming down the pike. Do you have any thought on that? Do you have anything going? Do you have anything that's going with that? What do you think is coming down the pike for us?
I mean, there's so many things. Like I said, I alluded in the last segment that this world, our environment, our society is moving at an unnatural speed. If anything is bound to happen in our world right now. Anything from an invasion of an extraterrestrial force or forces to what is called martial law in our country, to other world nations finally grouping up to come after the big bad wolf known as America, to the point where all the hell that's going on in other nations, we can actually see on our land. All because, what if you ever ask yourself a question, what if they get tired? What if these other nations that we are the biggest and baddest, what if they just get tired of all these clandestine, covert operations that we're doing in their country and they come after us? You know what I mean? What's to say about us being so safe? We feel like we're so safe. I can equate that to being Godzilla rummaging through our country. Is
you know
that
what?
bad?
That is, if you ask me, I think that's very effective. That's a very effective picture in my head right now. I remember learning in history classes, government classes, at the high school and the college level, that for the longest time, our isolationism, due to our geographical situation, where we got the Pacific on one side, we've got the Atlantic on the other. We, for the most part, we had an early warning system. We had standoff time. Kind of sort of like a boxer has, he's got room to box with. He's got room to work, and if you don't have that room to work, you get your ribs worked on. And I think you're right. It's a huge possibility that we're losing that standoff time. We're becoming part of the global network, part of the global village. And I had heard something earlier in the week, something about China saying that we need to de-Americanize the world. What do
you heard that too, huh? Mm-hmm.
Oh, hey, I heard that. I've got a lodge brother down in Texarkana that literally you and he are banging the same drum. He's a little more hopeful. He hasn't said go out and buy a shovel. He has said go hit Gander Mountain, go hit Big Five Sporting Goods, and start stocking up. Those are his examples.
I mean, that right there's pessimistic too. That's not too optimistic. That makes you 50-50 or more 75.
Yeah,
he's on the money. He's on the money. He does need to hit those sporting goods shops. You got to do something, but ultimately you only can protect yourself. You're only protecting yourself, you and yours. What about the rest of us? What about the rest of us? You're going to protect yourself but so much, but if they want these powers, they're so big and broad and so bad that there's no way that they cannot get to you. Whether you lock yourself into a house, whether they send in a drug or a mist or a spray or whatever to get you out of that house or to kill you, just setting off of chemical war on you, there's no way you can survive. They can get all the arms you want to. That's why I'm pessimistic and not optimistic. I always say there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to kill you. There's more than one way to assassinate someone.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And we've only got about 10 minutes left of the show, and I told you I wanted to give the floor to you, give you the chance to talk to the listeners. If you've got any public appearances coming up, any new books coming out, whatever. I know you said you wanted to read a piece, which we're definitely excited for. And we want to give the microphone to you now and, let you do your thing. The floor is yours, my friend.
All right. Well, I do have the follow-up to this novel here, Considered Odyssey, The Evolution of Patron Saint, will be a project by the name of, it's entitled Origin. So it goes into a little bit more detail. It goes into more nuances dealing with Kennedy. And just giving you guys the insight, Kennedy was what you call a martyr. I was going to leave it at that. Kennedy was a martyr. He was meant to be killed. And he knew he was going to be killed. His family knew he was going to be killed. But I can go into detail about that at a later date. Basically, what I want to do is just read a little piece to you. Before I do that, you can go to my website, www.thewriterofbooks.com. There you can read some of my syndicated articles that goes into detail about the subject matter or my thoughts on how I think about the world and us and we the people. When it comes down to we the people, I just want to clearly say before I read my piece that the terms democracy and freedom are concepts forged from a common fairy tale. In these evolving times, we're nothing but a pack of conditioned sheep running aimlessly about, fooling ourselves into believing in our own individualism. I say we're nothing but eating, peeing, sitting, procreating, overworked, tax-paying, childlike creatures soaring the skies of Neverland. The pixie dust, nothing more than a strategic concentration of pure BS. So here's my piece. History is a rather convoluted thing as it is recorded. The sheer weight of the world's words endlessly drowned in a sea of well-placed, strategically balanced, yet beautiful lore. As a self-described historian, objectivity is a necessity and definitely warranted with such studies. But as an author of questionable fiction who wanders the grandiloquence of history's many gateways, I've always fancied the rim of the steepest literary precipice. There is no debating the long and unfortunate line of national and international martyrs whose names and actions will forever live on throughout the many pages of world history, and through those rare but inquisitive, wild-eyed youths who are truly riveted by the many stories of old, stories that make up only a fraction of humanity's tumultuous history, when the truths behind what we believe to be fact are but cleverly disguised mirages. From my perspective, one of these martyrs happens to have a grand story, both in his lifetime and post his untimely demise, one whose overwhelming impact on American history happens to tug at me with such vengeance as our late President, John F. Kennedy. From my exhaustive studies in world history, there's no question in my mind that history is a rather convoluted thing as it is recorded, for you see, it all unraveled on the evening of July 3rd, 1947, in the tiny town of Roswell, New Mexico, when a respected business owner, Dan Wilmot, and his wife were simply relaxing on their front porch. It was on this evening when they witnessed a bright saucer-shaped object with glowing lights move across the cloudy sky at an undeterminable rate of speed. Undeterminable rate of speed. The next day, a tremendous amount of unearthly debris was discovered in the area. That night proved to be infamous and would later come to be known the world over as the Roswell UFO crash incident. President Dwight Eisenhower's farewell address to the nation on January 17, 1961 was not only purposeful, it was a cunningly cloaked one so as to not infringe on the presidential oaths or divulge the many secrets he, as all presidents, was bound. Eisenhower's address was directly related to the Roswell incident because of what took place in the days that followed. Having succeeded Truman for the presidency and having read his predecessor's notes in the Presidential Book of Secrets, Eisenhower was fully aware of the meeting Truman had with Evie and was in line with Truman's initial precautions given what transpired that evening. Fully aware of the evolving trajectory of a mission known as Classification Falcon Sweep, and due to what was surmised of the military and technically advanced intel that came of their research, Eisenhower watched as this once noble endeavor manifested into a diabolical plot with many thorns. Those thorns were so deeply embedded within the tactical arms divisions within our nation that not even the power of the presidency could stop it. One thorn was codenamed the Animan Project, an unsanctioned government experiment aimed at developing a superhuman armed force using the men and women of our armed forces. And so it was that Eisenhower's farewell address to our nation was as succinct as it was bold in its delivery, a targeted warning to all Americans and the peoples of the world when he stated, in the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. With President Eisenhower's address seeming to fall on deaf ears because of the unusual heaviness of his words at that particular time in history, the strategic military experimentations that took place after the Roswell incident existed and persisted without pause and ultimately led to the November 22, 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Behind the assassination lay a vast conspiracy well hidden within the complexity of a massive bureaucratic spiderweb that we the people have come to believe and accept when in fact Project Animan was the mainspring of our president's demise. This is what happened, and I know that this will be an extremely hard pill to swallow, but it must be told. Project Animan reached and evolved a testing phase and needed a war. Vietnam was that war. Kennedy was simply in the way. Jim Marrs, author of the critically acclaimed book Crossfire, published in 1989, made one of the most important statements ever written concerning the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, which I believe you should take into consideration when it comes to my story. Do not trust this book. In fact, when it comes to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, don't trust any one source or even the basic testimony or evidence. In the case of the JFK assassination, belief and trust have long been a part of the problem. As a pragmatic author of fact-based fiction, and in order to protect my life and the lives of my family, I present the totality of what I've discovered, not only through the covert counsel of my anonymous source and an extremely rigorous research process, but in a fashion that demonstrates the unfettered draw of speculative fiction. Simply put, I present my story as a warning, wrapped in a lie, in order to tell you the truth. Mark Twain may have been writing about this very project of mine when he wrote that truth is stranger than fiction, because fiction is obliged to stick to possibilities. Ladies and gentlemen, truth isn't. And there you have it.
AK, thanks very much. That was very, very riveting, and I am looking forward to the chance to read your book, and I'm pretty sure that we all are looking forward to that chance. Clarissa's having a few issues with her mic. I think it's a possibility the Men in Black may have gotten to her. I'm telling you, I'd like to meet one with a baseball bat. I'll fix him in a red-hot second.
Don't talk about the Men in Black, Rick. That's a whole other story with me, too. So.
Hold on.
Okay, sorry about that technical difficulty, folks. Rick and I just kind of traded headsets here for a minute because, for whatever reason, Skype decided to drop me. But Mr. A.K. Kuykendall, ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested in his works, you can visit thewriterofbooks.com. I will put that in the Hazy Radio Network chat room. AK, thanks so much for being on the show tonight. We enjoyed it. I'm going to have to book you for a return visit because we just scratched the surface, man.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to that, and thanks for having me on.
Oh, the pleasure was ours. Stay tuned, folks. Coming up after the show, Hazy herself is going to be spinning some music. Be sure to tune in to Crossing the Void Radio. Next week, they're going to have Nicole Strickland talking about the Queen Mary next Wednesday at, 8 p.m. Eastern, I think is when Scott starts.
Yeah, we started.
And next week on PARA-SCOPE Uncensored, we've got Varla Ventura. She's going to be talking about mermaids, banshees, werewolves, and vampires. So be sure to tune in to PARA-SCOPE Uncensored next Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern. For Scott Hare and Rick Ariza and myself, have a safe and happy weekend, everybody. We'll see you next week.
PARA-SCOPE Uncensored is a subsidiary of Pukwudgie Media in association with the Hazy Radio Network.
Pukwudgie.